Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your excellent presentation, Tobias. So, just briefly introduce myself. I work for Trade Policy Bureau now as a senior director at METI, and I used to work for METI as a FTA director from 2017 to 20, which was first Trump administration. And for the last 2 years, I was in US, and at that time, I happened to know Tobias and his wife. And so I'm very delighted to be here. And so as a government official, it's not so easy to comment on this very touchy issues, but I'll do my best. So basically, I'll comment on two issues or topics, which already described. So the first one is about Trump risks that you mentioned. So I share your view that the uncertainty is the most fundamental issue. And of course, we knew what happened in the first Trump administration, and many policy direction or ideas have been laid out recently. But still, uncertainty exists for to what extent that will be implemented and that kind of things. But in addition to what already explained, I think what important is that Trump himself wants to be seen as an unpredictable person. So that's, I think, a very important point, because through the negotiation, he might use this kind of understanding or recognition to change the course. I mean, as a negotiator or deal maker, if majority of the views or even media predict some directions, he intentionally might change course just because of his that kind of positions. So therefore, it's important to have in mind his that kind of thinking to clearly understand what might happen in the future. So that's my first point. And second point is with regard to your other parts, potential scenarios for Japan, and also managing Trump 2.0. So it's not so easy to comment on that topics further, but I can say that, of course, I still think that the bilateral relationship is important. It's not just for this Trump administration, but in other administrations, it's true that the leaders' bilateral, even personal relationship is important. But I share your view that still the other relationship with the U.S. government, so you mentioned in D.C. or in Tokyo, so we recently have many created platform or dialogues. So therefore, we have many connection with the U.S. government. So of course, the change of administration follows with many change of the senior officials, but we need to have a further communication in different layers and try to make further efforts to create a new relationship, not just a leaders' bilateral relationship, but also between government to government. And as you partly mentioned, to let U.S. side understand that Japan is critically important from their viewpoint, from the strategic point of view, especially after this geopolitical change, that's a critical part. But at the same time, when it comes to the trade and investment issues, it's basically important to understand how Japan has been contributed to U.S. side, namely from U.S. side, Japan's contribution is already there. So the one very basic but important fact is that Japan's investment to U.S. has been top for the last 5 consecutive years, if I remember correctly. And that creates so many jobs in the U.S., so meaning that's also beneficial for U.S. side. So that kind of basic fact is kind of starting point, of course, and we probably face negotiation or many interactions. But at least at the first stage, for us, it's very important to start from that kind of conversation and try to make more efforts to let U.S. side understand the importance of Japan, even in their different administration. So that's my points. And if I may, I'd like to move on to the question part from me. So my first question is very hot topics these days. So it's about Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, how do you assess his potential role, who seems to be leading so-called Department of Government Efficiency? And it seems he shows stronger ties with Trump, especially these weeks or something. And so, but there are many predictions to what extent he will be, what kind of role he will play in the actual administration. So how do you think about this?
Well, thank you first for your comments, which are appreciated. I think I fully agree with both points. It's an interesting question, and maybe it also allows us to think a little more too about personnel in the second Trump administration anyway, and this is both for Elon Musk but also for anyone, and that I don't necessarily think there's reason to think that the second administration will be different from the first in terms of the durability of any particular office holder. And of course, if you remember the first time there was lots of change, when Trump was unhappy with someone, he was happy to remove them, and I don't expect that part of the administration will be different. That when things go wrong, he'll be looking for someone to blame. I think he, of course, seems to enjoy removing people in, I guess, theatrical ways and maybe entertaining ways and letting them find out because he tweeted something or something like that. In terms of Musk specifically, I mean, he does seem to be playing almost serving as a de facto transition chair and is involved in the personnel discussions and figuring out the staffing. I don't expect this to be a permanent fixture over the course of the next 4 years. I mean, both because I suspect, that if it seems that Elon Musk is overshadowing Trump, or if, there's whispers that Elon's the shadow president, that Trump is not going to like that, and he'll find a way to move him out of the way. I mean, of course, he also has companies to run, so at some point there may be expectations that he goes back and does that. And then there's also the amorphous nature of this. I think maybe we should just be honest and call it a commission. I mean, because ultimately it is not a government department until Congress says it is. And I suspect that Congress is going to jealously protect its responsibility for appropriations and budgeting, and may take some of the recommendations, but is certainly not guaranteed to. So in that sense, I don't necessarily think we should expect that that he's going to do a fundamental Twitter-style transformation of the federal government. I mean, the federal government is one of the largest organizations in the world, and nothing is going to happen easily within it. So in that sense, I don't know if we should expect that he's going to be doing this forever, and that he will necessarily make a lot of progress in the near term doing that. I think we could expect him to play. We've already seen, he was meeting, Iranian diplomats, that he might have kind of a floating, informal role, being an envoy to certain leaders. Of course, he has a close relationship with Prime Minister Maloney in Europe, so there might have him do outreach to Europe, and whatever it is, that he might be kind of a floating envoy, and Trump will task him with certain things, but. I don't expect that he's going to be as heavily engaged over the entire course of this administration as he is right now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yamaguchi and Mr. Harris. Do you have any further question?
If I have time.
Yes, okay. Time is
So
okay.
actually, I prepared two questions. So
Sure.
my second question is, so as a well-known expert on Japanese politics and as a famous author for the Prime Minister Abe's book, who is a politician in Japan that you were most interested in currently to follow? So that's my question.
To follow, I mean, after Ishiba potentially, or just in general, who I mean, obviously at the moment, for good reason, there's of course loss of interest in Tamaki-san, and the role that he is now playing is almost the swing player and the casting vote in the Diet. And so by necessity, I think in some ways he's the most intriguing figure, and the role of the Democratic Party for the People is tremendously important. And so really bears watching, and of course, he now of course is dealing with his own little scandal, and seeing how he weathers that is important as well. And so that, so Tamaki, I think first and foremost, I think watching how the LDP of course has its own challenges and is dealing with ongoing unpopularity and the challenges of running a minority government. But I think what we did see from its leadership election in September is that it does have talented politicians. It does have leaders who are waiting and who will hopefully lead the party in the future. And so, of course, I'm interested to see what Kobayashi-san, what happens with him. I'm of course interested in seeing what Koizumi Shinjiro, what happens in his career going forward as well. I mean, I think this is an important moment for Japanese politics as a whole. It is a transitional moment. I think there's been real shifts in where power lies within the system, and it's of course as someone who watches this professionally, I think it's a fascinating moment. But I also recognize, this is a challenging moment, and a challenging moment geopolitically for Japan to enter a period of maybe weaker governments and slower decision making in politics.
Thank you.
We will move on to the question and answer session. And allow me to start with my question. Yes, I wrote the economics class. I think that is a first class, the historical document. It is quotable to for the many occasions. And my question is that why did you write? Because now the Japanese watcher is worldwide very decreasing there. So what attract your attention about on the Japanese policy or the Japan itself?
Really, thank you again for your appreciation of my book. I really, I'm grateful for that. So I guess two questions. So to answer maybe the second question first, throughout my career, I started studying the language, Japanese language in university, but then was quickly just found Japan's history, its role in the world, its relationship with the United States important and worth studying. And of course, then once I was looking at Japan's foreign policy and its history, then realizing that much like any other democracy, to understand how it makes decisions in foreign policy and how it acts in the world, you have to understand its politics. You have to, that ultimately all politics is in fact local, and was drawn into wanting to understand Japanese politics more, and of course worked for a Diet member, of course the current environment minister Asao, and had the opportunity to work in his office, which was really a real education in how Japanese politics works, and then continue that both in my academic and professional careers. In terms of writing about Prime Minister Abe in particular, it occurred to me after watching his return and watching how he performed in office and the invention of Abenomics and his foreign policies, that there really was and first and foremost, if you're going to write a book, you better have an interesting story to tell, and that there was a story to tell. That a politician who, both because of his lineage and the family he comes from, and how he consciously positioned himself in Japan's history, but then beyond that, his personal story of rising very quickly to the premiership, having an unsuccessful first premiership, and then coming back from that and having a profoundly successful second administration. That it just made for a good story. There was a lot of material to talk about, and that he was, I think, an extremely important leader for Japan, but then also for the world during his tenure, and that it was worth explaining why he mattered to audiences outside of Japan. And so ultimately that was why I thought it was a book that needed to be written.
Thank you very much for your answer. Actually, this book is a very huge book, and 450 pages, but it includes 100 notes as for the reference. It's very, very nice. I think that it's trustable. Thank you very much for your answer. And we have now several questions from the audience. Okay, the first one is that, hi, many thanks for sharing your insight. So what will be happening to the Democrats in your view? Yes, your suit is blue, but maybe you are very neutral. Will they be coming back stronger or not?
So, there's a few ways to think about that. Of course, we're now at this point where the election was 2 weeks ago, and there's lots of discussion among Democrats about what happened, what went wrong, what did they miss, why did this happen, and some of the answers to those questions are not even specific to the Democratic Party. Of course, that the numbers now have circulated about how incumbent parties all over the world have been falling, and of course we very much Japan included in that, even if the government itself didn't fall, but it did suffer a major electoral setback, and that in some ways the Democratic Party actually performed better than expected when you look at the inflation numbers and some of the dissatisfaction in the public, and that they made the election closer than maybe than it might otherwise have been. So, and certainly maybe closer than it might have been had President Biden not stepped out of the race. So in that sense, that there may be, when you lose an election, of course, it's kind of a traumatic event, and there's a temptation to try to make lots of changes and to think about all the things you did wrong. But to some extent, this might just be the fundamentals were against the Democratic Party, and in a couple years' time, midterm elections might well go the Democrats' way, and then in 4 years, that the public might be ready for a Democratic candidate again, and there might not be a single answer to what the Democrats can do about it. I think there's some comfort in that, and that there'll be sort of the thermostatic effect in politics might well work. But I think there were some lessons or some things that Democrats do need to think about as they figure out the way forward, and that's looking at the coalition essentially that Trump assembled to win. And I think this election maybe gave us more insight into that there really is maybe a class distinction, that the Democrats really now have become the party of college-educated, white-collar professionals. And Trump's coalition, it's, of course, the very wealthy, but also I think we can understand some of the success he had with Latinos, maybe with Asian Americans, with African American men, that it's a coalition of people maybe who feel either they're risk takers, they're entrepreneurs, they're people who have built their own businesses. They basically have opted out of the white collar professional career approach to life, and or they're people who've never had a chance to really succeed in that part of the economy in the first place. And so that you almost have American politics divided between risk takers and risk avoiders. And the question is there a way for the Democrats to peel off some of that coalition to bring them back into the Democratic Party? And what do they have to do to maybe appeal to those types of voters? And that's a question I don't think the Democrats have an answer to it right now. I don't have an answer to it, but there's a need for some thinking about the kind of party it is, who they appeal to, what kind of candidates they run, recognizing that this is how the last several elections, what they've revealed, I think, about the American electorate.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And I'd like to move on to the next question. It's also the policy question. Who is the prime figure to deal with U.S.-China relations, based on your view?
I think it is. I think it's too early to say for sure, but I suspect that a lot of foreign policy, in particular China policy. And we saw this during the first administration as well, that a lot of it's going to run through the White House, and so I suspect that Congressman Walz will have a lot to do with running China policy, and of course that would suggest that China policy might end up being quite hawkish. But we also saw during the first administration that because of the focus on economics, the Treasury will have a lot to do with that as well, particularly if there are heavy tariffs placed on China, or if there's a pursuit of a kind of big trade deal with China. Treasury will have a say in that. USTR will have a say in that. So I don't know if there's going to be a single player. I think we can expect that influence might float around depending on what the agenda is focused on at any given moment. There may well be competition between sort of the more economic side and the security focused side, and that who has the upper hand could vary from day to day or week to week. So I'm not expecting there to be a single figure who's really the China czar.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to pick up the final questions. It's two. The first one is, do you have any idea about which of specific industries that Trump administration would have impact on other than automobiles? This is the first question, and it's a relevant question. Do you have any specific recommendations for the Japanese government and Japanese companies? Yes, do you have any idea about the two questions? If you could please answer it. And after that, I'd like to ask Mr. Yamaguchi and you the final remarks to the audience.
So with specific industries, do you think would that be in a bilateral context then with Japan? Or?
Yes, with Japan.
Okay. Well, I think there'll be an interest in having Japan buy more energy from the United States, right? And then of course, and it's also maybe it's a good reminder too that there'll be continuity in some ways, right? There's going to be a focus on exporting more U.S. energy to Japan, getting of course, Japan to import U.S. LNG. I think we can expect the Trump administration is going to want to do that in particular. Foreign military sales, I think, is something that you can expect. We've of course already seen it under the Biden administration. I think more defense spending, but also more purchases from the United States. I think that is something we should also expect to see as well. That just that you're seeing the United States as a provider of things that Japan needs. I think it should be the expectation, should be the assumption.
How about steel industry?
Yeah. And then the specific recommendations, I think, to something that Yamaguchi-san said. I think it is, really being prepared to emphasize how the U.S.-Japan relationship serves U.S. national interests. I think having that mindset, approaching, and of course that was how things worked when Abe met with Trump, and of course giving diagrams that showed Japanese investments in the United States, and I think that ultimately has to be the framework. How is this good for the United States? How does Japan support U.S. growth, support U.S. security, support U.S. national interest across the board? Ultimately that has to be how Japan approaches the United States. And in general, I think maybe having an attitude, even if the reality is that there are political constraints, that it's going to be difficult to maybe deliver exactly what the United States wants. But having an attitude, maybe we can call it a can-do attitude, that the response has to be, oh yeah, we can find a way to do that, even if it is going to be even if it's going to take time, even if it's going to be drawn out, even if maybe things end up being watered down, but allowing Trump to say that he's getting concessions from partners, I think, is important. That he wants, and that again is something I think we saw during the first term. He wants wins. He wants to show that his approach to the world is succeeding in fixing these unfair deals that that the U.S. made over the last several decades. And so, appealing to that approach to the world, I think, will work in Japan's favor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. Yamaguchi, may I ask the final remark?
So I don't have so much to say. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And yeah, it's my great honor to be here. And I really learn a lot from your insightful analysis and also comments. And yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for Japanese audience to learn from your insightful comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I think just and briefly, I think the last word on this is, that and this continue this theme of continuing trends from recent years. But it is another opportunity for Japan to be a regional and global leader. That there is still a need for a rules-based order globally and regionally, and if there's going to be a vacuum in pursuing that, Japan needs to find a way to play that role, to step forward and to articulate, what a new what the order should look like. That it can't just leave it to others to do it, and it should work, with every partner it can find, every friend it can find, to articulate that. And that really, I think, is this really should be Japan's moment to really step forward and to really be a shaper of international order, not just a taker of international order.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Japan is considered to be leading the world in economic security policy, and your message is very clear: to be prepared. And now our concern, or risk, doubled maybe, but the preparedness would be the same in the quality, and yes, quantitative it doubled, but quality, our effort will continue and go forward. And let me introduce the phrase which describes that the announcement of the Reiwa. It's very beautiful thing. The Prime Minister Abe said that all Japanese will be able to make their own blossoms come into full bloom together with their hopes for tomorrow. We decided on Reiwa with the hope that Japan will be just such a nation. Thank you very much for describing such this scene as the first part of your book, and we should be the alliance of hope, then the good Reiwa, the era with U.S. And now it's time to close the webinar. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris and Mr. Yamaguchi, for your participation. Thank you very much for your participation in our Bbl webinar today. Have a nice day.